Welcome back, lovely ladies. If you want to become the woman of your dreams, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. And join our Patreon for even more exclusive content. Now, let's dive into today's story.
Seth Rogers sat at a corner table in the small cafe next to the pro shop at St. Michael's golf course, nursing a sports drink and half listening to the television as he wound down from a late afternoon round. The sun hung lazily in the southern Ohio sky, bathing the well-tended greens in a soft orange glow. Seth had spent another day chasing a white ball around, telling himself it was exercise, even though he rode a golf cart for most of the holes. A warm breeze drifted through the open door, and he leaned back, enjoying the flow of air across his face. Hank Simmons, a fellow golfer and longtime acquaintance, walked into the cafe and headed straight for the counter. He requested a BLT and an iced tea before catching sight of Seth and strolling over. They exchanged the usual friendly nods before Hank took a seat. His expression looked tired, like the day's heat had sapped a little more energy than usual. "Hit it straight and long?" asked Seth, swallowing the last of his Gatorade. "Straight enough," Hank replied. "Not long enough, and I definitely hit the ball more times than I should have." Seth grinned. "That's the thing about golf. Most of us aren't very good at it, no matter how much money we invest." Hank nodded, chuckling. "It's a fool's errand, but here we are." He let out a sigh, then leaned forward, elbows on the table. "I might scale back. Maybe fewer holes or fewer afternoons out here. It's just too much sometimes." "Don't you dare," Seth teased. "If you cut down on your game, who will I commiserate with about sand traps?" Hank gave a resigned smile. "I swear those things have magnets in them." They talked about the stifling humidity, the dogleg on the 14th hole, and the way the local Reds were faring. Seth pulled out his new driver from the bag behind him, pointing at it proudly as though it were a trophy. Hank shrugged and said he'd seen too many miracle clubs fail to improve a game. They both laughed, and after a while Hank's BLT arrived, followed by a second round of drinks, this time 2 cold beers. Eventually, Seth set his cup down. "So," he said, drumming his fingers on the tabletop, "have you heard anything about Jason Wilson?" Hank, mid-bite, raised his eyebrows. "What about him?" Seth leaned in, a conspiratorial smirk on his face. "I heard he switched sides. You know, he's a her now." Hank's brow furrowed. "What does that even mean?" "You know what I mean," Seth said, lowering his voice. "Word around the course is that Jason doesn't go by Jason anymore. Folks say he's calling himself Jasmine and wearing dresses and all that." "That's ridiculous," Hank said. "I saw Jason maybe a week and a half ago. He was the same guy, complaining about his drives and bragging about his grill skills for summer cookouts." Seth shrugged, an amused twist to his smile. "Gossip is gossip, man. But I hear he's living full-time as a woman now, or at least dressing that way. Someone mentioned he had an operation too. I'm not exactly sure on the details, but apparently he's changed a lot." Hank squirmed in his chair. "That sounds like nonsense. You can't just wake up one morning and do all that without a single person noticing. Jason never mentioned anything like that." "People keep secrets," Seth said, swirling the ice in his beer. "I can see why she wouldn't announce it to everyone. It's not exactly small talk." "But this is a major change," Hank insisted. "You'd think it would come up in conversation." "Maybe it's true, maybe it's not," said Seth, shrugging again. "But there's a lot of chatter about it in the clubhouse. Manny over there at the register is calling him a pervert who tries to play off the ladies' tees." Hank looked past Seth to where Manny stood at the counter, wiping it down with a rag. Manny gave them a quick glance, but seemed otherwise focused on tidying up for closing time. "Manny's got a big mouth," Hank muttered, turning back to Seth. "He's probably exaggerating." "Still," Seth said, "it's a popular topic these days. Maybe you can talk to Jasmine, and figure out what's going on. People say plenty of things, some of them contradictory, but where there's smoke, there's usually fire. Hank pursed his lips, uncertain. If Jason is changing, that's his business, or her business, he said softly. I just hope folks around here keep it respectful. I've known Jason since high school. Seth's laugh was mirthless. Respectful? You know how people are. Gossip feeds on itself, and they'll talk about anything that raises an eyebrow. Hank frowned as he finished the last bite of his BLT. He stood, paid for his meal, and left, feeling unsettled. He'd known rumors to spread quickly in town. Half of them were complete fabrications. Still, something about Seth's tone lingered, that little half grin that said he believed every word he was repeating, or maybe that he didn't care if it was true. Hank sighed. He liked Jason. He also knew how vicious gossip could become, especially with something that felt sensational. If Jason was going through any kind of shift, even just enjoying cross-dressing privately, the local rumor mill would have a field day. Darcy Wilson stood in the aisle of a local bookstore, scanning the shelves for a particular novel. She was in her mid-30s, tall and athletic, with dark hair pulled back into a neat ponytail. Her reading group had assigned a classic by Pat Conroy, and she was determined to find it today. She glanced through the available titles, exhaling in frustration when she realized the store didn't carry the one she needed. Just then, she heard a familiar voice call her name. Darcy turned to see Tara and Allie, two women she recognized from the neighborhood. They approached, big smiles on their faces. "Darcy, looking for something interesting to read?" Tara asked, a little too cheerfully. Allie smirked. "Not that you need any more fun, right?" Darcy tilted her head. "I'm looking for a Pat Conroy novel for my book club. Why, what's up?" Tara and Allie exchanged glances. "Oh, you know," Allie said with a mischievous grin. "Just curious about your home life." "My home life?" Darcy echoed, putting the book back on the shelf. Tara winked. "We heard you've been having quite the adventurous summer." Darcy's eyes narrowed. "Adventurous how?" Allie giggled. "Don't be modest, Darcy. Word is that Jasmine, is prancing around your house in a maid's dress, cooking meals and calling you all sorts of flattering names." Darcy's heart thumped. She kept her composure. "I'm not sure what you mean," she said in a level tone. "That's a very specific rumor." "Oh, we've heard all sorts of things," Tara cut in. "That you're the ringleader of it all, that you finally got tired of Jason's old habits and insisted he become more, shall we say, feminine?" "That is so personal," Darcy said, pressing her lips together. Allie shrugged dramatically. "You know how the rumor mill goes. People just love to talk, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Some of us think it's empowering. I mean, if you tamed your husband so completely—" "Tamed?" Darcy repeated, bristling. "Jason's my partner, not a pet, and I'm sure you can find something better to do than discuss my marriage in a bookstore." Allie raised her hands as if surrendering. "No offense intended, just pointing out that you're the talk of the town. People are saying you're the one who suggested he embrace wearing dresses. Some folks claim you're downright militant about it." "Right," Tara added. "We're not judging. Actually, I admire your bold approach. I wish I could get my boyfriend to pick up a broom more often." The conversation was growing more uncomfortable by the second. Darcy cleared her throat. "This isn't the time or the place to dive into gossip. Excuse me, I need to see if another store might carry the book I'm looking for." Without waiting for a reply, Darcy hurried out of the aisle and walked briskly toward the exit. Her cheeks were hot, and she felt a wave of annoyance mixed with anxiety. Rumors traveled fast, and apparently they'd moved well beyond whispers. She wondered how much of what was being said had reached Jason, or more accurately, Jasmine. But she knew the two of them had made a decision not too long ago about slowly revealing Jasmine's wardrobe choices and name. They just never predicted it would happen with this much drama. Behind her, Tara and Allie were grinning at each other. "Well, that wasn't exactly a denial," Allie mused. Tara nodded, "which might as well be a confirmation." They both laughed, imagining the kind of chatter that would continue swirling around Darcy and her spouse. And so the rumor spread, as rumors do. One person told another, who told another, who shared it with a friend at lunch, who mentioned it to a coworker, who texted someone else on a whim. Soon, the entirety of their small Ohio community was buzzing with stories about Jason Wilson. A few months earlier, Jason had just been a genial, if somewhat ordinary guy who liked grilling in his backyard, played a decent round of golf, and occasionally talked about fixing up his basement. Now, tongues wagged non-stop about Jasmine, the new name folks attached to him, and the flamboyant lifestyle they assumed must come with it. "The rumor is he's spending all his free time in dresses," one woman told her friend in a hair salon. "I heard he's had a complete surgery," another insisted to anyone who would listen. "I've got a friend who says Jason goes out in skirts every night and meets strangers," someone else claimed in a coffee shop. People nodded knowingly, even if they had nothing but hearsay. They relished every tidbit, however far-fetched, passing it around like it was indisputable fact. Some took a curious or even supportive tone, but many were mocking or scornful, dropping nasty remarks without a second thought. The rumors turned lurid in places, with tales that Jason had joined some secret nightlife scene, or that Darcy forced him into dresses as a form of revenge, or that their relationship was now a strange spectacle. Each version was more dramatic than the last. At the same time, Darcy and Jason, who indeed preferred to go by Jasmine in private, tried to maintain normalcy behind closed doors. Their marriage was built on years of trust, and though it wasn't always easy, they had found a particular harmony. Darcy recognized Jasmine's clothing preferences, and Jasmine loved that Darcy was comfortable enough to let her explore wearing feminine attire. They'd discussed easing out of the shadows, gradually letting the community see Jasmine. In a small town, however, gradually wasn't an option. News spread at the speed of light, and half of it seemed absurd. One evening, Jasmine stood in their bedroom. She wore a soft, light yellow summer dress that flared at the waist. It had a pretty floral pattern near the hem. Her hair was brushed to a gentle shine, and she had on modest makeup, neutral eyeshadow, and soft pink lip gloss. She turned toward the mirror and admired the way the outfit draped, feeling a sense of calm that came from finally living in a way that felt right to her. Darcy, sitting on the edge of the bed in jeans and a collared shirt, watched with a small smile. "You look amazing," Darcy said, her voice steady with warmth. "That dress was a nice find." Jasmine turned back to her. "Sometimes I wish we'd done this differently," she said, her tone tinged with anxiety. "We tried letting it leak out a little, but I feel like it snowballed into something bigger than we ever intended." "People like to talk," Darcy said. "They always will. You can't keep the whole world in check, and we both knew folks around here might go overboard. Rumors are like weeds. They spring up again and again." Jasmine sank onto the bed beside her wife. "They're calling me all sorts of names. I hear bits and pieces from random strangers in line at the grocery store." Darcy sighed, gently placing a hand on Jasmine's shoulder. "I wish we could stop them, but if they're going to gossip, at least let them see you for who you really are. Maybe that'll steer them away from the nastiest lies." "That might be the only way through this," Jasmine murmured. "But it's scary. When I walk out dressed like this, I feel like all eyes are on me." Darcy nodded. "It's real. I understand. But you're not alone in it. I'm here, okay? Always." The two shared a moment of quiet, just breathing and looking at each other. Jasmine felt the comfort of Darcy's presence, something that reminded her that no matter how many rumors flew, they would face it side by side. Not too long after, Darcy found herself maneuvering a shopping cart through the local grocery store. She needed produce for dinner: tomatoes, lettuce, maybe some fresh herbs. As she checked a carton of raspberries, she overheard two women nearby whispering. "That's her," said one in a hushed tone, glancing at Darcy's back. "I hear she's the one who started this whole thing," the other added. Apparently, she demanded he become more feminine. Darcy gritted her teeth but continued inspecting the fruit. She didn't want to spin around and confront them. It wouldn't help. Still, she couldn't help catching more snippets as they kept talking, apparently believing they were out of earshot. "They say he's her maid or something," said the first voice. "Wears little uniforms and cleans the house. This is all some weird arrangement she's got going on." "I heard she won't let him be a husband anymore," said the other. "He's now officially a live-in assistant or something, and she's punishing him for some reason." They dissolved into laughter at the idea. Darcy took a sharp breath, forced a polite smile at a passing neighbor, then moved on to the next aisle. She couldn't confront every rumor, she'd wear herself out. In the produce section's overhead mirror, she caught a glimpse of the two women watching her. She let them have their stares. Across town, Gina Wilson, Jason's sister, walked up the driveway to Jason and Darcy's house and rang the bell. She and Jason were both past 30, and in childhood they'd been typical siblings, sometimes bickering, sometimes fiercely protective. Gina had gotten wind of the swirling stories. Though she and Jason had rarely discussed his interest in feminine attire in the past, she remembered the childhood hints. Now she wanted to see her sibling face to face. Jasmine answered the door, wearing gray leggings and an oversized sweater that hung off one shoulder. She had minimal makeup on, looking relaxed and comfortable. "Hey," Gina said, stepping in. "I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd see how you're doing." Jasmine's smile grew wide. "Hi, sis. I'm good. Come on in." They moved to the living room, and Gina took a seat on the couch while Jasmine settled into a nearby armchair. Gina surveyed her sibling, noticing how serene Jasmine looked, even amid the chaos around them. "Mind if I ask?" Gina started, then paused, unsure how to phrase it without sounding intrusive. Jasmine nodded encouragingly. "Of course you can ask me anything, Gina." "So, all these rumors, how much is true? Or is it all nonsense?" Jasmine clasped her hands. "I can't even keep track of half the rumors. They range from me being forced to wear clothes I don't want to, all the way to me being involved in bizarre nighttime escapades. The real truth is simpler. I've preferred dressing like this for a long time, ever since we were kids, and I used to sneak peeks at your closet. Now, with Darcy's support, I'm finally able to be myself more openly." Gina raised a knowing eyebrow. "I do remember that time I caught you trying on my skirt. You must have been about 19, although I guess you'd borrowed my clothes even earlier, right?" Jasmine smiled sheepishly. "I guess that memory never really left me. I've been living with that part of myself for a long while." Gina rested a hand on Jasmine's knee, leaning forward. "I'm happy you're doing what feels right. If people are being nasty, that's on them. Are you holding up okay?" Jasmine nodded, eyes glistening just a bit. "It's not easy hearing all that talk behind our backs. And it's not just about me. People spread gossip about Darcy, making her out to be some puppet master forcing me to prance around. It's ridiculous." "But you two are all right?" "Yes," Jasmine said, smiling warmly. "We're strong. This was a joint decision in many ways. We had a lot of conversations, a lot of honesty. She's incredible." Gina sighed. "I wish half the folks in this town spent their time being supportive rather than spreading tall tales. But that's how people are." They sat and talked about the more mundane aspects of life: work, old friends, Gina's husband Mike, before Gina headed home, promising to come back soon. Jasmine felt relief that her sister didn't judge or mock her, but the nagging awareness of the town's rumor mill still weighed on her. One Sunday afternoon, while Jasmine was upstairs tidying the bed linens, she heard the doorbell ring. A moment later, she heard Darcy's voice echo from the foyer. "Oh, hey, Hank, what's up?" Darcy said. Hank's voice was muffled but audible. "Hi, Darcy. I wanted to return these hedge clippers I borrowed. Figured I'd drop them off." Darcy paused. "That's thoughtful of you." Jasmine, curious, inched over to the top of the staircase. She lingered out of sight, listening. "I also," Hank began, then hesitated. "I wanted to talk to Jason, if that's all right. We used to grab a drink after golf, but I haven't seen him in a bit. There's all this talk going around, and I'd rather get the facts from him directly." "Come in," Darcy said calmly. She sounded neither surprised nor offended. "But just so you know, Jason doesn't exactly go by Jason anymore." "Right," Hank said, voice lowered. "I heard." "Why don't you have a seat here in the living room?" Darcy offered. Jasmine heard the shuffle of footsteps. She also felt her pulse quicken. It wasn't that she feared Hank, but it was the first time an old friend had come by specifically to address the rumors. Darcy raised her voice slightly. "Jasmine, we have company." Jasmine drew a steadying breath, smoothed her blouse, and descended the stairs. She wore fitted jeans and a peach-colored top with lace trim, along with low-heeled sandals that gave her a graceful posture. She tried to maintain a calm expression as she entered the living room. Hank stood up from the sofa, looking both awkward and concerned. Hey," he said, clearing his throat. "Long time no see." Jasmine gave a small nod. "It's good to see you, Hank. Sorry if I've been avoiding the golf course. Things have been complicated lately." Hank let out a tight laugh. "I'm sure they have." He rubbed the back of his neck, apparently unsure how to proceed. "Look, I wanted to talk face to face. There's been a lot of chatter. People say all sorts of things. I kept thinking it couldn't all be true, but the more people repeat it, the wilder it gets." Jasmine sat in an armchair, motioning for Hank to sit again. He did so, still looking uncomfortable. Darcy stood near the living room's threshold, her arms folded gently, observing. "Yeah," Jasmine said softly. "A lot of it's made up. The general idea that I'm presenting myself differently is true, but the details, especially the scandalous ones, are nonsense. I'm not forced into anything. Darcy didn't threaten me. It's just something we decided together, that I'd be more open about how I dress and who I am. We expected some gossip, but it grew bigger than we thought." Hank exhaled. "Well, I'm relieved to hear you say that. I was worried you might be going through all this alone. Seth at the golf course was throwing out some pretty wild statements. Manny, too." Darcy couldn't hold back a half smile of exasperation. "Manny is definitely a ringleader for rumors, that's for sure." Hank glanced from Darcy to Jasmine. "Do you plan on heading back out to the course anytime soon?" Jasmine shrugged. "Honestly, golf was never my main passion. I liked it well enough, but maybe I'll go again if I feel comfortable. The problem is, I know how folks whisper in that clubhouse." Hank nodded slowly. "They do, but not everyone's out to mock you. I swear, if you need a friend, I can help shut down some of that talk." He paused, then added, "If that's what you want." Jasmine felt a sense of relief. "That would mean a lot. Thank you." Darcy stepped forward and touched Jasmine's shoulder gently. "Hank, do you want to stay for dinner? I was going to whip up some pasta. We don't have to talk about heavy stuff all evening, but maybe we can catch up like old friends." Hank's eyes darted from Darcy's face to Jasmine's. "If you're sure it's okay, I don't want to intrude." "Of course," Jasmine said, managing a small smile. "It'd be nice." They moved to the dining area, shifting into easier conversation as Darcy prepared a quick meal. Hank asked about Jasmine's job, about the small improvements they'd made to the house, about local news unrelated to the rumor mill. Every now and then, he seemed hesitant, perhaps recalling the shocking hearsay that had circulated. But each time, Jasmine calmly dispelled the wilder accusations. Hank, in turn, appeared relieved. By the end of the meal, the tension had eased, replaced by a tentative sense of mutual understanding. In a tight-knit community, no rumor stays quietly in one corner for long. When Jasmine finally began appearing in public in feminine attire, sometimes dresses, sometimes slacks paired with a soft blouse, people reacted in a wide variety of ways. Some stared, others whispered behind her back. A few offered polite nods or forced smiles. Jasmine kept her head high, though it was a struggle at times. For about a week, the talk became louder, as if seeing her out in the open rekindled the flames. Some insisted that Jasmine was engaged in scandalous relationships. Others claimed Darcy had left her. Still others were convinced Jasmine was performing in nightclubs. The stories were never consistent. One day, a rumor would say Jasmine only dated men now. The next, it would claim she was living a secret triple life with 2 other people. Through it all, Jasmine and Darcy tried to live as routinely as they could. Work, errands, dinner at home, occasional gatherings with the few friends who stuck around despite the swirling talk. When word spread that Hank had been seen having dinner at Jasmine and Darcy's place, a fresh flurry of rumors began. Perhaps Hank was also wearing women's clothing now, some insisted. Or maybe Hank and Darcy were in on a grand scheme together, and Jasmine was the outcast. People combined the new gossip with the old, churning out ever more outlandish scenarios. One morning, as Darcy flipped through the mail on the kitchen counter, the doorbell rang again. She walked over and opened it to find Manny, of all people, standing on the porch. He had a somewhat forced grin on his face, like he'd just stepped into territory he found uncomfortable. "Manny?" Darcy said, puzzled. "What brings you here?" Manny cleared his throat. "I just wanted to swing by and, talk. Could I come in?" Darcy hesitated, recalling how Manny was one of the worst instigators of rumor at the golf course cafe. Still, she stepped aside. "Sure, come in." Manny shuffled into the living room, removing his baseball cap. He looked around, perhaps expecting something sensational. Maybe that fabled maid's uniform that kept popping up in stories, or an interior decorated with frills that screamed transformation. To his visible surprise, the house looked like any other suburban home, with comfortable but ordinary furnishings. "So," Manny began, "I know we don't talk much outside of the cafe, but I've been hearing stuff." Darcy folded her arms, waiting. Manny fiddled with the brim of his cap. "Look, I'll be honest. I might have repeated some gossip in the past few weeks. It sounded crazy, and I was making jokes, but I didn't realize it might cause real issues for you and your spouse." Darcy's gaze didn't waver. "Gossip always causes issues, Manny. It's careless and sometimes cruel." Manny nodded, eyes on the floor. "That's true. I just got carried away. You know how it is. The guys come in talking about the latest rumor, and it's all in good fun. But I guess it got out of hand." Darcy took a careful breath. "And now you're here because—" Manny cleared his throat. "Because I feel bad. And well, some people at the course are saying we shouldn't be so quick to judge. Hank's been shutting down a lot of the talk. Seth, on the other hand, keeps stirring it up. But I wanted to see if you and Jasmine, are okay." Darcy blinked, softening a bit at Manny's unexpected concern. "We're getting by." "Sure, yeah," Manny said awkwardly. I also want to apologize. If I said anything that was nasty, I'm sorry. Sometimes I throw out jokes when I shouldn't." Darcy let the silence hang for a moment before speaking. "Apology accepted, as long as you stop spreading misinformation." Manny's shoulders seemed to relax. "I'll do my best to correct folks when I hear them talking." Darcy nodded. That'd be a start. Just then, Jasmine's footsteps sounded on the stairs, and she appeared, wearing simple gray slacks and a teal blouse. Her hair was brushed neatly around her shoulders. Manny looked at her, cheeks reddening slightly, as though not knowing quite how to address her. "Hey," Jasmine said kindly, though her posture was guarded. "Did I hear the doorbell?" "Jasmine, this is Manny," Darcy said. "He has something he wants to say." Manny managed a faint, sheepish smile. "Hi, Jasmine. I wanted to apologize for the things I've said at the golf course cafe. I was wrong to pass along rumors, and I hope you're doing okay." "Thanks," Jasmine said, swallowing. "I appreciate that. It hasn't been easy, but we're trying to keep perspective." Manny's eyes flickered with something that might have been genuine regret. "I get it. Look, I'll leave you two alone. I just wanted to stop by and say my piece." Darcy escorted him to the door, and Manny stepped out, giving them a short wave before heading to his car. As she closed the door, Darcy turned to Jasmine, who looked pensive. "That was unexpected," Jasmine said softly. "Yeah," Darcy sighed. "Maybe a sign that this town can do better eventually. Or maybe Manny's just trying to keep the peace. Either way, I hope it reduces the drama." Jasmine reached for Darcy's hand and squeezed it. One day at a time. Meanwhile, the rumors continued to churn outside their doorstep, though now there was a small countercurrent of folks either defending Jasmine or shrugging off the gossip. Some had grown tired of the topic altogether. Others simply found new sensational stories to chase. Still, the old stories about Jasmine lingered, morphing and evolving into new permutations. Occasionally, Jasmine wondered if she should post an official statement on social media, something clarifying her situation. Darcy discouraged it. "Those who want the truth can get it from you directly," she reasoned. "People who just want to gossip will find something else to say anyway." Hank became a surprising ally. He'd show up at the golf course, and if anyone made a snide remark or tried to peddle an outrageous rumor, Hank would correct them, or at least express doubt. "Look, if you don't know Jasmine or Darcy personally, maybe keep your theories to yourself," he'd say. It didn't stop every loudmouth, but at least some folks quieted, unwilling to confront Hank's staunch stance. One afternoon, Jasmine and Darcy decided it was time to go out for a casual dinner at a busy local restaurant, not just the quick grocery or home improvement store run. They hadn't tried to dine in public together for weeks, worried about the stares. Darcy wore a summer dress, while Jasmine chose a flowing skirt with a fitted top. They held hands briefly as they walked through the parking lot to the entrance. Jasmine felt her heart pounding, but Darcy's steady grip reassured her. A hostess greeted them with a polite, "Good evening. Table for two?" Her eyes flicked curiously over Jasmine, but she didn't waver in her professionalism. "Yes, please," Darcy replied. They were seated at a small booth by a window. Jasmine noticed a few heads turn. A man at a nearby table nudged his wife, and the two whispered something, throwing a glance in Jasmine's direction. Jasmine tried to focus on the menu. Darcy placed a comforting hand on her forearm. They ordered drinks and dinner, making small talk about the day. Gradually, Jasmine relaxed. Not everyone was gawking. The waitress, a young woman in her 20s, seemed perfectly pleasant, chatting about the evening specials, as though there was nothing unusual about the couple. Halfway through their meal, they heard a voice from behind them. "Darcy? Jasmine?" They looked up to see Allie, the same friend from the bookstore fiasco, stepping forward with a curious expression. She was alone, carrying a takeout bag. Darcy nodded politely. "Hey, Allie." Allie placed a hand on the back of the booth. "I didn't expect to see you two here tonight." Her gaze landed on Jasmine. "You look nice." "Thank you," Jasmine said quietly. Allie fiddled with her purse strap, then said, "Listen, about the other day in the bookstore. I'm sorry if I came off pushy. Tara and I were just, well, we got swept up in the excitement of it all." Darcy gave a slight shrug. "It's okay. You got your information from that unstoppable rumor mill." Allie nodded. "Yeah, but still, it's no excuse. People are curious, but that doesn't give us a license to pry or laugh about it. Anyway, I'm meeting my sister outside, so I won't bother you. Just wanted to say hello." With that, Allie left. Jasmine and Darcy exchanged glances. Despite their initial annoyance with her, it seemed even Allie had recognized how out of control the gossip was. The rest of the evening passed with relative calm. Jasmine felt a rush of relief as they paid the check and left. Eating dinner in public, while simple on the surface, was a major step for them. They'd done it, faced a few glances, a brief encounter with Allie, and survived. Later that night, back home, Jasmine settled onto the couch, feeling a mix of exhaustion and pride. Darcy sat next to her, leaning in so their shoulders touched. "You okay?" Darcy asked, voice soft. Jasmine nodded. "I think so. In some ways it's nice just to see how ordinary everything can still be. People looked, but we still ate a meal and no one ran us out. Some people apologized. I guess that's a win." Darcy let her head rest on Jasmine's shoulder. "Some folks might never give us peace, but maybe enough of them will leave us alone or be supportive." Jasmine breathed in slowly, then released the tension in her shoulders. "I'm ready to start living more openly. Not because the rumors say I'm forced or that I'm doing bizarre things, but because I really do want to be." She paused, remembering certain words she'd promised not to use. "I want to be at ease with who I am." Darcy smiled gently. "You deserve that." They lapsed into quiet, the only sound the hum of the air conditioner. Outside, cicadas droned their summer song. Jasmine gazed around the room at the simple, cozy life she and Darcy had built. The gossip out there was cruel, but in here, love was straightforward. People continued talking, of course. Some carried the rumor that Jasmine had divorced Darcy and run off with an old high school flame. Others claimed she was traveling to major cities to join exclusive clubs. A bizarre story circulated that she was now a live-in caretaker for a wealthy recluse, while still another insisted she was about to open a local boutique catering to unusual clientele. None of these had any basis in reality. Yet ironically, some people grew bored, latching on to newer stories about other topics altogether. Whenever Jasmine felt overwhelmed by the wave of stories, she reminded herself of the progress she had made. She had a strong marriage. Her sister was supportive. A few friends like Hank had stepped forward. Manny, a major gossip, had even softened. That didn't stop the mean-spirited jokes or the lingering suspicious looks, but it gave Jasmine an anchor. One weekend, she visited Gina for dinner at Gina's house. Her sister's husband, Mike, was polite though somewhat guarded, unsure how to act. But once they started discussing sports and the local news, they settled into an easy rapport, proving that everyday conversation could transcend assumptions. Jasmine noticed how Mike's posture relaxed as the evening went on, and by dessert, he was joking with her about how pitiful the local baseball team looked. On the drive back, Jasmine realized that was another victory: normalcy. She was tired of being treated like a spectacle, but moments of ordinary connection helped balance the scale. As the summer wound down, the town's gossip engine ground forward with its usual patterns, picking up new controversies whenever they cropped up. Some folks continued to mention Jasmine's attire whenever they saw her at the post office or the drugstore, but eventually it became less novel. She was no longer just an unseen rumor. She was a neighbor, walking around in her chosen clothing. The initial shock factor faded. A few still snickered, of course, but others went on with their day. Hank reported that on the golf course, Seth was still occasionally making jokes about Jasmine, but fewer people were laughing along. "They're starting to get bored with that topic," Hank told Jasmine during one of his visits. "Seth tries to rile people up, but Manny doesn't feed into it anymore, and guys like me tell him to let it go. Sure, he still has a few buddies who like a cheap laugh, but it's dying down." Jasmine felt a flutter of relief. "I guess if you starve a rumor of attention, it loses power." Hank nodded. "Exactly." One quiet Tuesday afternoon, Darcy got off work early, and she and Jasmine decided to relax in the backyard, where a pair of lawn chairs faced a small garden. They sipped iced tea under the shade of a large oak tree. Jasmine wore cropped pants and a soft, sleeveless blouse, enjoying the calm hush of the neighborhood. "I've been thinking of painting our bedroom," Darcy remarked. "We've had that neutral cream color for too many years. I'm leaning towards something lighter, maybe a pale blue." Jasmine smiled. "Let's do it. A small change might brighten the place up." They were discussing the pros and cons of different paint finishes when a car pulled up out front. Hank stepped out, gave a short wave, and walked across the lawn to greet them. "Hope I'm not intruding," he said, standing near the fence. "Come sit," Jasmine said, pointing to a spare lawn chair. "We're just talking about paint colors." Hank laughed. "Paint colors, huh? Sounds domesticated." "Domestic bliss," Darcy teased, winking at Jasmine. "Well, except for the rumor that I've got her chained to a bucket of soapy water right about now." Hank shook his head. "People and their imaginations. It's quieted down a bit at the course, though. In fact, Manny actually told Seth to knock it off a few times." Darcy raised her eyebrows. "Manny must have had a real epiphany. Or maybe Manny just realized how petty it all was," Hank replied. He looked at Jasmine. "How are you holding up otherwise?" Jasmine smiled, letting out a slow breath. "It's not perfect, but it's better. I'm glad folks are realizing I'm not a circus show. I'm just living my life. And if they still want to pass rumors around, that's on them." Hank's gaze was steady, something like respect in his eyes. "Well, if you ever want to return to the course, I'm happy to go with you or meet you for a drink afterward." "I appreciate that," Jasmine said, feeling genuine gratitude. "Maybe I will." And so the pattern continued. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. Darcy and Jasmine would go for walks around the neighborhood, sometimes receiving a curious glance or a hushed whisper, but not the blatant gawking of a month prior. They visited Gina and Mike for barbecues, where the only tension came from whether or not the grilled vegetables were getting overcooked. Hank stopped by to talk about sports or to share the latest benign gossip unrelated to Jasmine. Every so often, someone from the outside, an acquaintance or co-worker who only knew the rumors, would pop into the picture, stirring the pot with fresh nonsense. But as with many stories in small towns, the novelty wore off. Eventually, people found new topics: a scandal with a local politician, controversies at the high school, real estate changes. Jasmine's situation became part of the town's tapestry, not the star of it. Darcy, watching the shift, found a sense of relief too. She had been braced for the worst, people confronting them in the streets, or vicious harassment. While they still faced the occasional remark, it wasn't as overwhelming as she'd feared. Maybe their small town wasn't so backward after all. Or maybe it was just that the unstoppable tide of gossip had moved on to new shores. On a crisp autumn day, with leaves turning golden in the trees, Jasmine parked her car in front of the local grocery store. Darcy had asked her to pick up a few items for dinner. Jasmine stepped out, wearing a light cardigan over a knee-length skirt. She took a steadying breath, still half expecting to feel eyes boring into her. But as she walked through the parking lot, people passed by, mostly minding their own business. A few nodded politely in greeting. Inside, Jasmine gathered her basket of produce and glanced at the tabloids near the checkout. The magazines touted celebrity dramas, breakups, transformations, shocking secrets. With a small smile, Jasmine mused that tabloids weren't too different from the rumor mill in a small community, sensational and often baseless. Just as she finished at the self-checkout, Ruth, a neighbor who lived 2 blocks over, approached. Ruth fiddled with a box of cereal in her hands. "Hey, Jasmine," she said. Her tone wasn't as gossipy as it once might have been. "Hi, Ruth," Jasmine responded with cautious warmth. "I was just wondering," Ruth began. "There's talk that you, do you still live with Darcy?" The question was direct enough that Jasmine was taken aback. "Yes, of course I do. Why wouldn't I?" Ruth shifted on her feet, looking a bit sheepish. "I heard someone say you two had separated, but I guess that was just another rumor?" Jasmine offered a small smile. "We're perfectly happy, so that rumor's false." "Okay, good. I'm glad," Ruth said, nodding. She stood there, uncertain, then let out a quick exhale. "Look, I know people around here can be invasive. I hope you realize some of us just want you to be well." "Thank you," Jasmine replied quietly. "I appreciate that." Ruth's gaze flickered to the floor. "Anyway, sorry to bother you. Have a nice day." She walked away before Jasmine could say anything else. Nonetheless, it felt like a subtle sign that even the curious ones might be turning a corner from frantic speculation to cautious acceptance of reality. Later that evening, Jasmine recounted the grocery store encounter to Darcy as they prepared dinner. Steam rose from a pot of pasta, and a skillet of marinara sauce bubbled on the stove. "I get the sense that the rumor that we're divorcing is making the rounds again," Jasmine said. "It's almost funny how people can't keep track of what they've made up. One day they say you forced me to be a maid, the next they say I left you. It's never consistent." Darcy rolled her eyes. "I heard from a coworker that we're opening a chain of fancy boutique shops. Apparently the talk is that we're using them to host private fashion shows." Jasmine laughed lightly. "I wouldn't mind opening a boutique if I actually knew how to run one." "Right?" Darcy chuckled, sprinkling fresh basil into the sauce. "But hey, it's Friday night. Let's tune out all the noise and just eat." They sat down to a cozy meal, toasted with glasses of sparkling water, and enjoyed the simple fact that they could still find normalcy in each other's company. One final wave of chatter arose shortly after, sparked by a local article in a small-run publication. Some half-informed writer decided to pen a piece about unusual lifestyles in our midst, citing Jasmine as an example. The language was sensationalist, framing Jasmine's wardrobe and presentation as a bizarre phenomenon. The writer made references to what used to be Jason and suggested that the entire transformation was orchestrated by Darcy for reasons left to lurid speculation. It was tabloid-esque, inflammatory, and poorly researched. Hank texted Darcy a link the moment he saw it online. "Heads up," he warned. "You might see some renewed talk about this." Sure enough, for about a week, the chatter resurged. People mentioned the article at the diner, at the library, and at church gatherings. Some insisted it must all be true because they read it in print. Others shrugged it off. Darcy and Jasmine tried to ignore it. When approached, they calmly disputed the inaccuracies. Eventually, even that story lost its steam, replaced by something else, new local controversies overshadowing older gossip. One cool evening, Darcy and Jasmine relaxed on their living room couch, sharing a blanket while an old movie played on TV. A breeze from the open window carried the faint scent of grass clippings from a freshly mowed lawn. Darcy nudged Jasmine's foot with hers under the blanket. You remember how terrifying this all seemed a few months ago? Darcy said quietly, eyes on the screen. Yeah, Jasmine murmured. I didn't know if this town would just keep attacking me. And now? Jasmine took a moment to reflect. It's calmed down, at least enough that I don't feel like I'm dodging pitchforks. Some folks still talk, but it's more of a hum than a roar, and I've learned I can't control it anyway. Darcy pressed closer, resting her head against Jasmine's. Gossip is powerful, she said, and it can wreck lives if people let it, but it doesn't have to define us. They fell into a comfortable silence, lulled by the black and white scenes flickering on the television. In truth, gossip never truly dies. It lingers, ready to flare back to life with any perceived new development. But for now, at least, Jasmine felt freer than ever before. She had found a stride, running errands, attending gatherings, even chatting with neighbors, without feeling the urgent need to hide. People still whispered, yet it no longer felt as though every eye in town was fixated on her. Seth might still peddle rumors at the golf course, Manny might still crack a joke or two, but the world hadn't ended. Darcy wasn't some tyrant, and Jasmine wasn't a puppet. At worst, they were the center of a town's curiosity. At best, they were free to live their lives as any couple would, sharing chores, planning their future, enjoying simple daily routines. Gossip was still undefeated in the sense that it could not be eradicated. Someone would always share a tidbit, spin a new tale, or resurrect an old rumor. But with time, the barbs lost their sting. People found new topics to obsess over, new controversies to explore. And amid all that flux, Jasmine and Darcy quietly built a stronger sense of trust in themselves. They knew the truth of their lives better than any rumor could capture. A brisk November morning arrived with scattered clouds and a breeze that carried a slight chill. Even so, Jasmine decided to take a walk through the town's small park. She donned a casual sweater dress, thick tights, and a comfortable pair of ankle boots. Pulling a coat tighter around her, she strolled past families feeding ducks at the pond and older couples walking dogs. Near a wooden bench, she spotted Hank, who waved and beckoned her over. He wore a flannel jacket and jeans. With an amiable grin, he motioned to the seat beside him. Jasmine sat, rubbing her palms together for warmth. "Nice day for a walk," Hank commented, gazing at the pond. "Yeah, I needed some fresh air." Jasmine studied the swirling water, momentarily at peace. They talked about local happenings, nothing dramatic, just the color of the leaves and the possibility of an early snow. Eventually, Hank brought up something else. "Seth's been quieter lately. I think people are bored with mocking you now that you've proven you're not the spectacle they imagined." Jasmine nodded. "Good to know. I guess it's one of those things. If I'd stayed hidden away, their imaginations would have run wild. But since I'm out and about, there's less mystery." Hank patted her shoulder. "I'm glad you're doing well." "Thanks," Jasmine said, smiling. They sat in easy silence for a while, watching the ducks glide across the pond. That evening, Jasmine recounted her day's walk to Darcy as they sipped tea in the kitchen. She mentioned running into Hank and how the atmosphere felt calmer, like the tensions had settled. Darcy listened, nodding, smiling at the small comforts Jasmine was discovering. After so many months of chaos, they could breathe and plan for the future without constant dread. Darcy said, "We should invite Gina and Mike over for a holiday dinner soon, maybe Manny too, if we're feeling magnanimous." Jasmine chuckled. "He might actually come. He's been stepping carefully since that apology." "Let's do it. A small gathering. Show people that we're as ordinary as can be." Jasmine placed her mug in the sink. "Sounds nice. And if they talk about it afterward, At least we'll know it was a pleasant meal. No skeletons in the closet. At least not the ones they imagine. Darcy leaned against the counter, her expression turning thoughtful. I guess this is our new normal. A half-truth in the rumor mill, reality in our living room. Jasmine stepped over and threaded her fingers through Darcy's. Yes, but it's ours, and for the most part, we're okay. They stood there, hand in hand, the hum of the fridge filling the moment of silence. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the window pane. Time passed. Winter arrived in earnest, cloaking the streets in frost and occasionally dusting the trees with snow. In the midst of holiday preparations, buying gifts, hanging lights, Jasmine and Darcy found themselves hosting a small get-together. Gina and Mike came, as did Hank. Manny didn't show, but he sent well wishes through Hank. Despite the chill outside, the atmosphere inside the Wilsons' home was warm, scented with cinnamon candles and the savory aromas of a slow-cooked stew. Jasmine wore a simple sweater and jeans that evening, hair pulled back in a loose clip. Darcy was in leggings and an oversized flannel shirt, looking casual and relaxed. The conversation flowed easily around the table, with jokes and stories about the year's ups and downs. Occasionally, the unspoken reality of Jasmine's new visibility in town flickered at the edges, but no one dwelled on it. They had moved on to new bonds, forging a sense of everyday closeness. When the evening wrapped up, Gina hugged Jasmine goodbye, whispering, "I'm proud of you. Keep being yourself." Jasmine nodded, a grateful smile on her lips. As the months rolled on, the unstoppable force that was gossip did not disappear. It merely found fresh targets, new controversies. Occasionally, it looped back around to Jasmine. Perhaps someone moving into town would hear a rumor and pass it on, or an old neighbor would ask an intrusive question. But each time, the rumors seemed a little thinner and the truth more apparent. Most folks realized that Jasmine was just a neighbor who wore clothes that matched her identity, living quietly with her wife, going about day-to-day responsibilities. Yes, some folks still snickered behind her back. Some muttered judgments about whether it was right or wrong. Yet as far as Jasmine and Darcy could tell, the world had not crumbled. Gossip had roared like a thunderous storm, but storms pass and life remains. Their days were filled with the kind of simple tasks and joys they had known before. Weeding the garden, picking out paint colors, streaming TV shows in the evenings, occasionally going out for dinner. Occasionally, Jasmine still felt a twinge of concern, remembering how vicious the rumor mill could be. But she also felt the renewal of her own sense of contentment. She had stepped into public spaces as Jasmine, heard the whispers, and survived. One day, after a light snow, Darcy and Jasmine took a short drive to a nearby shopping district, keen to browse post-holiday sales. They walked hand in hand through the shops. Darcy found a warm fleece jacket. Jasmine discovered a pair of ankle boots that fit perfectly. They chatted about future weekend plans, maybe a trip to see Gina's new lake house in the spring. On the way home, they stopped for coffee. Outside the cafe, an older couple recognized Jasmine and gave a curt nod. Not friendly exactly, but not hostile. Inside, a barista welcomed them, took their orders, and showed no reaction to Jasmine's outfit, a knee-length skirt and matching sweater. It was a small but striking contrast to the uproar of only a few months prior. "Funny how normal this all feels now," Jasmine remarked as they found a table. "It should have felt normal from the start," Darcy pointed out with a smile. They sipped their coffees, watching the snow flurries dance outside the window. Eventually, winter's ice melted into spring. Gossip, in all its forms, was still out there, a living, breathing entity that never died. It swirled around local politicians, around neighbors rumored to be feuding, around a new chain store that might open on the outskirts of town. Jasmine's story became just one thread in that tapestry, less shocking and less of a focal point than it once was. Some folks still whispered, "Oh, did you hear the Wilsons are hosting get-togethers for people who dress differently?" Or, "I saw Jasmine in the mall. She looked surprisingly stylish, you know." The tone was different now, less scandalized, more curious, or even mildly appreciative. Others simply said, "Yeah, we know about Jasmine," and changed the subject. Jasmine realized that living openly, while it hadn't ended all the chatter, had changed its nature. People couldn't fill in the blanks with outlandish stories quite so easily when she walked among them, carrying on in her quiet, day-to-day routine. The fantasies of manipulative partners and wild nightlife became harder to believe when faced with the ordinary sight of Jasmine browsing produce at the store or laughing with Darcy on a restaurant patio. On a calm Sunday afternoon, nearly a full year after the first rumors exploded, Jasmine sat with Darcy on their back porch swing, listening to the rustle of new leaves in the trees. The sun was gentle, the air carrying the promise of warmer days to come. "I was thinking," Jasmine said, her voice taking on a dreamy quality, "maybe we could host a small summer cookout. Invite Gina and Mike, Hank, maybe a few others who've stuck by us. Nothing fancy, just a barbecue and good conversation. The gossip crowd can talk all they want, but at least we'll have fun." Darcy chuckled. "Count me in. I'll handle the grilling. You can handle the side dishes." Jasmine nudged her playfully. "Deal." A silence settled, one that felt comforting. Eventually, Darcy spoke again. "You know, it's been a ride, some of it harder than we ever imagined. But I'm glad we stuck together. I'm glad you're feeling more at ease." Jasmine nodded, gaze on the budding trees. "I'm grateful for you, and for everyone who helped us sift through the rumors without letting them define us." Darcy squeezed Jasmine's hand gently. "Now, if only we could muzzle the next rumor before it starts." Jasmine laughed. "We can't though, can we? It's going to happen when it happens. People will whisper, some will take it too far. Gossip is unstoppable." Darcy reflected on that, then smiled wryly. "Yes, it is, but at least we know it doesn't have the final say." They sat in that peaceful moment, the swing creaking softly under them, the smell of fresh grass filling the air. Inside the house, beyond these walls, perhaps someone was telling a friend a new story about Jasmine, maybe something false or sensational, and maybe that friend was nodding, half believing or half doubting. Tomorrow or the next day, the rumor might spread further. But right here, on this porch, in the warm light of spring, Darcy and Jasmine were just two people, bound by their everyday routines and the shared understanding that life goes on. Yes, gossip travels faster than sound, than thought, and can cut with a razor's edge. It can bring out the worst in people, feeding off prejudice and fear. It wrecks relationships, devours souls, and leaves wreckage behind. In its own way, it remains undefeated. There will always be new versions of it, unstoppable and relentless. But for Jasmine, for Darcy, for those who chose to see more than rumors, life had found a quieter, steadier path. It had endured the storm of whispers and emerged, changed yet still standing. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.